I know I do this, and I think it's easy for like other people that I know to do this too, of like to be quote fine for like as long as you can, to like say you're fine and you don't need anything else and you can just keep going and going and going for as long as you can. And then it gets to the point where it's actually really hard to like use those tools and regulate because your dysregulation is so high. But something that's been helpful for me is like really noticing in my body when I'm at like the midpoint of like not fully dysregulated, of just like halfway dysregulated, like, oh, I'm dysregulated. I don't have to wait until things have really, like hit the fan to take a step back and be like, okay, I'm going to take care of myself.
Hello, families, and welcome back to a new episode. I am so honored and thrilled and excited to be here with our student of the Fresh Start Experience, Miss Caitlin. Welcome to the show, Caitlin.
Hi, it's good to be here.
So good to have you. Start off by telling us a little bit about you. Where do you live? How many kids do you have? And how long have you been a student with us at the Fresh Start Experience?
Yeah, so my name is Caitlin. My husband and I live in Indianapolis with our two amazing boys. We have Rowan, who's almost 7, and Finn, who's 4.5. And we are an outdoor and indoor family. We like going kayaking and hiking, and we also like playing board games together and reading and playing video games and all those good things. So,
I love it. Kayak and hiking. That's my kind of family.
yeah.
So in Indianapolis, there's, I imagine, lakes, or is it rivers that you go to kayak?
Yeah, there's two rivers that kind of cut through the city, and
Okay.
there's some reservoirs too. And so we like this is like prime kayaking time in the summer. Like most
Oh,
weekends, we're like out there. We each take a kiddo, and we have friends that we go with, and it's just a really good time.
what a beautiful way to spend quality time with the kids. I love it. And Caitlin, how long have you been with us at the Fresh Start Experience? When did you join?
Yeah, so I looked back through my emails. I first heard about Fresh Start from a webinar that Fresh Start partnered with Sheila Ray Gregoire from Bear
Cool.
Marriage podcast almost exactly 3 years ago, in 2023. Doing my math
Yeah.
right, 2 years ago.
Yep.
And so it was just like a one-off. And so I went to that and I was like, well, that was interesting. And like, I want this for my family, but I don't see yet how like that can be a reality. And so I just kind of, it was just like kind of simmering in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
in January of 2024 was the like New Year Kickstart program that Fresh Start does.
Challenge. Yep.
Yeah, challenge. Yep. And so I was like, great, I'll dive into that. Um, and that was really eye-opening in a good way and challenging in a good way. And even
Mm.
just like it's short. It's a week, it's like tiny little
Yep.
lessons, and just like committing to that and implementing those things. Like I remember, just like having conversations with my kiddos that I wouldn't have had like if I hadn't
Mm.
done that challenge. And so I joined the Fresh Start community after that challenge. And so it's been since January of 2024. And here we are.
Yeah. So about a year and a half now.
Yeah, year and a half. Yeah,
Right? So year and a half ish, because I can't believe it's almost
I
September,
know.
but when this airs, it'll be September. And wow, so yeah, and you are an example, Caitlin, of someone who's really shown up, right? Like you've really seemed to stay engaged. You obviously finished the foundations course. That's where we start off everyone in the program. And so it's just been so fun to see your progress. The team and I have just really admired how you have stayed consistent with it. And I think you're an example of a student who has really been able to see the fruits of your labor. And one of my favorite things about your family and the way you've led your family into this season of growing and healing, I'm sure on some capacity or many capacities, is that you've brought your mom with you. And she has agreed to step into this program and do some of the education. And it sounds like she takes care of one of your little guys once a week or something. And so that's just like the extension of my dream, right? So when families join the Fresh Start Experience, we always say that your immediate, like mom and dad, are able to have access to the program too, as far as the education materials go. And just to see a student like fully taking advantage of that and using it, just like melts my heart. So thank you for leading your family in this way. And Caitlin,
Yeah.
you mentioned you found me through Sheila. We love Sheila's work so much. So it sounds like, were you kind of raised in more a bit of the evangelical or a little bit of the high control stuff that you decided to kind of unravel a little bit and do it your way, so to speak, or let go maybe of some things and move into other things as you became an adult? Is that more of your history?
Um, I think not to maybe the extent that other people have.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised Lutheran and still like happily Lutheran, but there's like definitely an aspect of just like I think more like my growing up was the things that I'm like unpacking from that are not as much religious and
Yeah.
are more like learning how to express emotions because that was not something
Yeah.
that I feel like I really learned growing up. And
Yeah.
so
Most of
that's
us didn't.
been,
Yeah.
yeah, that's been really good in terms of like continuing on my journey of like learning to express emotions and like verbally processing them aloud to
Yeah.
model to my kids, like having emotions and then visibly employing those strategies to self-regulate. There was something that happened
Yeah.
recently. We were like leaving a back to school night and the boys were like getting at each other because it was like almost bedtime, you know. And so we're like leaving and my almost 7-year-old, we're like walking back to the car and he just yells, I just feel so sad and hurt and like like right, which is like, you know, he's having a rough time and he's moving through it, you know, but like for me that was a success because it's like I still struggle to be able to say like I'm feeling sad and hurt right now, you know.
Yeah.
And so for like him almost 7, like having that vocabulary and self-awareness and understanding was just like okay, like this is working, you know, like this we're moving through this. So that was really sweet to see.
Yes.
And I should have posted it as a success and I just haven't done it on the circle yet. But
That is so amazing. Yes, that tells me so much about the way you are changing with your modeling of the emotional literacy. That's amazing. So yeah, so like that's so cool to hear. And being raised in a faith circle, was there any like punishment style stuff like reactivity? Because I imagined to follow Sheila, there must have been something, right? Like, so was that common in that faith circle? And because I feel like we see some Lutheran circles in our area that have evolved into more like there's a preschool here that everyone now has over the last 20 years, that one, and then the United Methodist preschool that my kids been to. People are so happy there, and they really are now teaching. They have healthy, like compassionate discipline teachers come in. I'm trying to think of the name of that sweet little Lutheran church that I pass every single day, and I cannot remember right now. But was there a little aspect of that growing up of the punishment that you then have to now unpack as an adult, as far as like the reactivity, maybe just a
Mhm.
tinge of instant obedience? I think that circle doesn't have it as
Yes,
much as
yeah,
others,
I
but
think
it's still
like
there,
for my
right?
family
Yeah.
particularly, like that's not I don't think that's the same for everybody and everybody's family is different, but there
Yeah.
definitely was like a like you obey and
Right. Okay.
like a shame aspect to it of why you don't do things, you know? So that's been good to unpack and re reimagine, you know, like this time
Yes.
around, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
And my parents live really close to my kids' school, and so they're like the before and after care for our
Oh,
kiddos, which is amazing. And it's just been really cool to see my parents, like when I've shared various things with them, like I'm really fortunate that they are so receptive and like willing to learn new things. Like that's something I respect about them
yes.
so much is how how they're able to change, you know? And there was
Yes.
something recently where my 4-year-old was like having a meltdown, leaving. Like the transitions are so hard sometimes, you know, like pick up and drop
Yeah.
off is kind of chaotic at times. But we were just leaving and I just got to see my mom like really empathize with my 4.5-year-old, you know, about like, yeah, of course you're feeling sad about this and all that. And so that was just like really cool to see that changing because like I don't remember that from my childhood and like I have a good relationship with my parents.
Yeah.
I love them very much and there's some things that like I didn't learn as a kid that I'm learning now, you know.
Yeah.
So
And that they
that
didn't learn as
right,
parents
that they didn't
then.
learn and
Now
they're
they're
still
learning this
learning.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, and are such a good example of like still being able to learn. Like I hope I'm still able to learn like that, when I'm their age.
Yes.
But
And
yeah.
I love that, Caitlin, because I think we do a great job of together as a community developing the joy of learning and just staying in that joy of the adventure, right? Like it feels so good to like fall in love with the process of learning and growing and not see it as a danger, right? But just more of like, oh, interesting. I am reacting
Yes.
really strong or whatever.
Hmm.
I saw a funny reel this morning. We used to have a black lab that loved to swim, and it was this funny one where someone had filmed him. He was going to the pool and he ran up to the door. This other lab on the internet, but someone sent it to us because it made us think of Tank. He runs up to the door and he's barking at the door, and then he runs in this pool. He grabs his toy, jumps in the pool, and he's swimming around the pool and he's so happy. And I'm like, this is what I hope my students develop as far as the lifelong joy of learning and growing. And I think that's kind of what I think of when I hear about a mom, a grandma that's like, okay, cool, throw me in. I'm down, Caitlin. Like, what do you got for me? And then you
Yeah.
see her actually applying it. And that story you just mentioned is one I hadn't heard, but you had shared another one where your little boy had like accidentally tipped I think it was his chair over, and was it some goldfish or whatever went all over the place. And I think you said your mom kind of first was like responded with a little bit of a shamey tone, like, oh, and then you saw her redirect herself. So maybe share that story with us, because when my heart melts when I think of the opportunities that grandparents have. And like Terry's mom same thing. She took care of our kids like at least the first 5 years. She was like there once or twice a week, before, after school. She was just like the ride or die grandma. And it's so beautiful to see them be able to develop this multi-generational relationship. And so it's great for parents, it's great for grandparents, but maybe just share that story of what happened and how you saw her redirect herself in the moment.
Yeah, so you have a better memory than I do on this, because I was like, oh
I
yeah,
have
when was
notes.
that? Um, but yeah, like something had spilled, and my mom's knee jerk was like, oh no, like, oh, like you made a mess or whatever. And just like me knowing, like seeing that and like being familiar with that as a response. And then she like changed gears, and like I could see really clearly her changing gears and like switching into like a positive framing of like, oh, we have to clean it up. Like, let's get a paper towel and, and take care of it. And just like hearing the tone shift and like hearing her change focus was really cool to see, and like inspiring that like I can do that too. Like even if I react initially to something, like that's not the end of the scene, that's
Yeah.
just the beginning of the scene, and I don't have to end it that way.
Oh, it's such a good way to put it. And yeah, you went on to say that what we teach students and what you guys practice understanding is we're not, we are changing to be in moral alignment with who we are and who we were designed to be, right? Kind, empathetic, loving, self control, self compassion, cool. But like also because it works. So you said, instantly, Rowan happily started cleaning up with her. My dad and I joined in, and even his 2-year-old brother joined in on the fun when he saw everyone else cleaning up. It was a beautiful moment of connection when it could have ended up with shame. And I'm so inspired by my mom changing gears, and I made sure to tell her how much I appreciate her. But like, it's just a great example of like, you want your kids to cooperate. You want them to learn to clean up their messes, take responsibility for their mistake, learn from the mistake. Like, it makes sense why my parents tell me not to lean back in the chair. I don't even know if that's what he was doing, but you want them to learn from their mistakes, right? We know that shame like shuts down the learning center, but compassion and firm kindness, like it really opens it up, and it makes them see the mistake and then take responsibility to make amends or clean up the mess. So I love that so much. What a beautiful moment to be able to witness. Funny, when I think that's so much a part of this work is when we get good at just catching ourselves. I think that's kind of more of an advanced level, but because in the beginning, Caitlin, tell me if you've experienced this, like you often catch yourself after, right? So
Hmm.
you might, like, if you're a parent, you might be like, you ream them, yell at them, whatever, grab her wrist too tight. Everyone's got different responses. Sometimes people lean towards permissiveness, but a lot of our crew leans towards reactivity with like more aggression or puffing up. And then later that night is when the learning comes and you get to look back and be like, oh, that's so interesting. This makes sense. This is how I'm going to do it differently tomorrow. But then the second stage is like when you start to be able to catch yourself in that middle zone. And that's a really cool zone to be in because then you can actually stop and redirect yourself. And this is funny. This happened with a full mastery student this morning. I was leaving a voice memo. I have a drive to my office and I was just leaving her a voice memo about something and someone ran a red light in front of me and it scared me really bad. And I was like, I get so angry. I get so angry at red light runners. And I was like, oh, I'm like, dude, someone just ran a red light. And then I'm like, and then I said, they make me so angry. And I before the whole thing came out, I stopped myself at and I was like, oh, I feel so angry when red light people run red lights. And that's something we teach in the community, right? Like you just take radical responsibility for your own emotions and then you process your emotions and then you act, right? We know anger is where justice is born. It shines a light on what needs to change. But she was laughing. She was like, I heard you correct yourself and like redirect yourself in real time. And that happens a lot. But I have
a story that happened like kind of recently that I think is an example of, you know, like doing something different than you've done before, like catching yourself in the middle and not after. So like something that has been really helpful for me on my journey, like I said before, is like expressing emotions and like being more comfortable with that. And kind of connected to that is like learning to empathize without trying to fix. Like I'm definitely somebody, and this is a good practice for me with my husband and my kids, you know, like if somebody tells me something, like I want to jump in and fix it. And that's like not the answer, like most of the time, you know? And so recently my almost 7-year-old got new shoes for the new school year because his old ones were worn out. And my 4-year-old was very sad because he did not get new shoes because he had already gotten new ones back in March when his worn out. And instead of bringing in that tone of like sort of scolding or like reasons like, well, you know, you already got new shoes, like here,
you know, thankful.
Right. Yeah. All of that. Like I didn't do that this time. And I just sat there and held him and empathized. Like it totally makes sense you're sad. Like it makes sense you're disappointed you didn't get new shoes when your brother did. Like that makes sense. And it was definitely a growing moment for me because I get really uncomfortable when people express emotions sometimes.
Yeah.
And it was like not a short process. Like I think with uncomfortable emotions, we want it to be like as fast as possible and just get through it, you know? And that's not what this was, you know? And so I was able to just be there for him and not dive into fixing mode like I would have in previous months, years, you know? And that like diving into fixing mode like that wouldn't have been a connecting experience, but choosing empathy in that moment was a connecting experience. And I'm proud that I was able to do that in that situation when I wouldn't have in the past.
Parents, I want us to be real with each other for a second. Summer often ends up being a total doozy for many of us. The kids are bickering, vacations sometimes feel more stressful than restful, and many of us end up juggling work and camp schedules or the 10,000 I'm hungry snack request a day. But this can all just leave us feeling really depleted. So if you are feeling snappy, overwhelmed, or, well, frazzled at the end of the summer, you are not alone. That is exactly why I'm hosting Unfrazzled, a totally free 4-day live stream event starting September 8th, going through September 15th. I will show you how to reset your parenting with a system that's both peaceful and powerful, so you can stay calm, set loving, firm, and kind boundaries, and show up as the grounded, powerful parent you want to be and that your kids need. It's the perfect way to shake off the summer chaos and start the new school year strong with a solid plan of action, feeling clear, confident, and connected. Head to freshstartfamilyonline.com/unfrazzled, or you can just DM me the word unfrazzled on Instagram. My handle is @freshstartwendy, and I will personally help you get signed up. Let's do this. Yeah. And once he kind of what we would call the official experience got over the rainbow, right? Like was able to get himself back down. I know sometimes in those moments, the little ones, they're like crying so deeply that they're like can't breathe. Or Stella used to get like rashes on her face because she would be so mad. But like in that moment, let's say when he was able to come back down just by you holding space for him, that's a concept we really teach deeply at Freedom to Be. But he was able to come down off of that emotional roller coaster, right? Like we always say, emotions are like clouds. They come and go if you allow them instead of like, oh, don't be sad. I'll get you new ones at Christmas. Like, that fixing that you're talking
Yeah,
about. But
yeah.
when he came off of it and he got down off your lap or whatever, did you see him just kind of go back a little bit to life, or was he still like pushing about the shoes? Do you remember?
Yeah, it hasn't really come up since then, you know?
Bingo.
He's like
Yeah.
he wrote it, and like
Yep.
we wrote it together, and I think eventually, it takes a lot of repetition, like a lot more
Yeah.
than, maybe I would want, you know? But yeah, just like even having to like repeat, and like it's okay to repeat,
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and I think eventually, like it was so, I don't have a memory of it really, because it was just like so chill and calm,
Oh,
and
so
it was
cool.
just we were able to go do something else, like get a snack or something, and
Yeah.
he hasn't been like, brother still has cool new shoes, but he doesn't have like the residual like sadness about
Pushing
it. Like
and
he was
yeah.
able to
Yeah.
just like feel all the sadness and move through it, and
Yeah.
he's been
Because
good,
the misbehavior would be like complaining, whining, pushing
Right,
back,
yeah.
begging, right? In traditional, like if we were defining misbehavior. And to hear again the effectiveness of the strategy, right? So
Hmm.
it's like it's not only connecting, and it's also like a healing moment for you where you're like, wow, I spent a lot of my life feeling responsible for somebody else's emotions and feeling like I needed to fix them, or I needed to make things better, or I was failing in some capacity. And then now, so you get the healing experience, you get the growth experience, and he gets to learn I really am capable of moving emotions, and also that there's firm boundaries. Like my mom says no. We know that so many people mistake this work for permissive parenting, and there are just endless attacks, especially unfortunately in the more like high control religious circles that just try to slaughter this work. And it's like so clear that they don't understand that we actually spend time building the muscle to be able to say no in a firm way with compassion and connection and follow through. And that's what that is, right? Because a lot of people would just be like, okay, fine, I'll get you new shoes. But like, you better be grateful and you better not get them dirty because this is ridiculous. I shouldn't even, but it's fine. So they kind of lean towards permissiveness with an attitude, or
Hmm.
you better stop crying. If you don't stop complaining about this, you will never get shoes again in your life, right? Like that's the other
Yeah,
side. And
yeah.
those are both examples of sticking to the boundary, kind of, but not. And
Hmm.
so to see someone follow through with just like, the answer is no.
Hmm.
And you're okay. It's okay to be upset in this house. It's okay to like have an imperfect moment where you might be loud at the park on a bench and cry for 10 minutes, and like people around us are going to be okay. We're going to be
Hmm.
okay. So,
Yeah, and that like
I love that.
emotions aren't manipulative by nature, if
Oh,
that
yeah.
makes sense. Like I had this sense growing up that like, oh, if you're like, like having a hard time, like crying for 10 minutes, like that's you doing a power play to like make people
Yeah.
do something or whatever. And it's really nice to be able to like see my kids from a genuine, truthful perspective of like, no, like sometimes you are that sad for 10 minutes, and you don't
Yeah.
have to like cut that short, and like you don't have to like get in people's faces about it, but sometimes you need to cry for 10 minutes, and
Yeah.
that's okay, and that doesn't make you a bad person or a manipulative person or anything like that. That's just like you're working
Yes.
through it, and you'll move through it, and there's not something wrong with emotions, there's not something wrong with you. um
Yeah.
so all those good
Which
things.
is such a beautiful way to like break a generational cycle, right? Painful generational cycles come in all ways, but like we know, especially more in like some religious circles, that like emotions and the heart is seen as like bad, untrustworthy, right? Like wicked. empathy is seen as like dangerous ground, right? Like even to this day, there's still like very famous books and pushes that like empathy is like this bad thing. And to be able to stand firm and say, no, this is actually the way, one of the ways I express my faith and a true moral value to me, that emotions are God-given and beautiful and help our nervous system actually function the way it's supposed to. Empathy is a superpower. Like all the things we practice is really beautiful to watch you do that, Caitlin. As we wrap today, I mean, I could talk to you for so long. I mean, I just have so many of your success stories we didn't get to today because there are many. But one of them you had shared with us over the last year or so was around your nervous system and really diving into the nervous system mini course that we have within the Fresh Start Experience and starting to really understand what's happening from a body perspective. How has that supported you and helped you? I know you were really great to come in and celebrate that you had finished. You had set out to do the mini course, you had finished the mini course, and that you're able to start applying some of those concepts to create that bigger space between the stimulus, misbehavior, and your response. How has that helped you as a mom specifically, the nervous system stuff?
I I think the successes I've probably shared with the community are more like, like I implemented this like in a situation where I was feeling dysregulated and I could tell. And, like instead of like jumping into like reactivity or like fixing something, I was like, ooh, I'm going to use this time and see what happens, which has been good. But I think on like the more internal side, something that like I'm still learning is like catching my own awareness of like how regulated or dysregulated I am. I think I do I know I do this, and I think it's easy for like other people that I know to do this too, of like to be quote fine for like as long as you can, to like say you're fine and you don't need anything else and you can just keep going and going and going for as long as you can. And then it gets to the point where it's actually really hard to like use those tools and regulate because your dysregulation is so high. But something that's been helpful for me is like really like noticing in my body, like when I'm at like the midpoint of like not fully dysregulated, of just like halfway dysregulated, like, oh, I'm dysregulated. I don't have to wait until like
Yes.
things have really, like hit the fan to take a step back and be like, okay, I'm going to take care of myself. I love using a heating pack. Like that's really comforting to me.
Ooh, okay.
So just like bedtime shenanigans happen. That's,
Yes.
I think, often a time when parents are like, whoa, dysregulation, right? And so like I have my heating pack like in my bedroom, and we're like getting the kids ready for bed, or in and out of the bedroom, and like being able to say like, oh, like I've had like a kind of a hard day at work. I'm kind of a little drained. Like I should just use the heating pack now and like take care
Oh,
of myself
yeah.
now before I'm at the point of like flipping my lid with my kids. So that's been like more of like the internal side of it, of like being able to take care of myself before I need a whole like cast on my like
Yes.
mental broken bone or whatever. It's like, no, I can do a band-aid now
Yeah.
before it gets like to that extreme. So
Yeah. Staying in that, my favorite nervous system teachers call that range of resonance, right? Where it's like sometimes you're super chill, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm like, and then other times you're approaching that top line. And what you're describing is such a great example of like leaning into building awareness around your body, right? So it's like embodiment. That's none of us learned that as a kid. And then as you get older and through this work in the Fresh Start Experience, I think it's been fun to expand the ability to just listen, right? So like the feeling you get in your stomach or the tightening. Like I get so much communication through like my neck and my shoulders. I had like a big interview yesterday for the podcast and I didn't sleep well and I had woken up with like a little headache and I'm like, that is so interesting. I really clench in my neck, or your heart starts to beat fast. Like that's a big one that I feel when I'm starting to approach tornado, volcano world. And so that's cool to learn that you've really started to build that and to come in there midway. Last one I want to just touch on because it's so sweet as we close this beautiful interview, Caitlin. We're just so grateful that you took time to be with us today, and bless everyone listening with understanding what it looks like to go on this journey when you join the Fresh Start experience and really commit to just being consistent, learning, growing, healing, making mistakes, getting it wrong, asking questions, coming back, celebrating your successes, and like having it all based on just building the family legacy of your dreams. But one of the things you had shared was you've developed the ability to tell your little guys like, hey, I'm working on something. And really this is a way to like influence them to do the same, right? We talk so much about modeling in the community and our teachings and our coachings, but you had said to them, hey, I'm working on some, changing and growing. And one day your little boy had said to you in the car, like, Mama, his exact words were, you shout at me all the time. And you had said to yourself, like, wait, I think I'm doing actually really good. And you wanted to say, what? No way. Like, I've been learning. I don't yell at you. But instead, you just said, oh, tell me more. Like, you got curious, right? Which is one of the tools we teach. You got curious and you said, tell me more. I have been working on like learning the pause, the stop sign instead of yelling. And then you had said to him, okay, so when I yell, do you want to just be able to tell me like, hey, Mama, look, you're yelling. Let's take a pause. And he was like, okay. And he ended up practicing with you. And then at the very end, you said, then with no prompting from me, he said, Mama, if I start yelling, you can tell me, hey, let's take a pause. So just put this in your own words, Caitlin, of what this has meant to you to be able to influence your child to behave in a way, what we would call that is like humility. And that is taking direction well, being able to take coaching, be able to listen to his mom because he wants to, not because he has to. What does that look like for you to realize that that is what you are teaching your son?
I love that story. And that is actually from like the New Year Kickstart
Oh,
challenge. Like that's how
cool.
early that was. And that's what really like prompted me to be like, oh, like this is really like this is effective. Like I'd been in it for 2.5 days or whatever. So like I hadn't
Wow.
implemented a lot yet. So yeah, just in terms of like effectiveness, like not everything is gonna like happen right away, but like that was
Yeah.
something that for me happened quickly. And
Yeah.
I was like, because I was in like the thick of the challenge, I was able to be like, whoa, okay, I should pay attention here and not just like jump to
Yeah.
like, no way. Um,
Wow.
but yeah, it's been really cool to see the ways that my kids are growing at the same time that I'm growing and
Mm.
the ways that they pick up on things, I think, quicker than we think they will because, we have certain, like those certain triggers that just like keep coming around and
Yeah.
there's like a lot of invisible progress that's happening that we don't always see. So, I'll share one more story. Recently, my almost 7-year-old started first grade. Super exciting. Um,
Yes.
and my husband was asking him like, "Oh, would you learn at school today?" And this was like the second day of first grade, and he immediately was like, "It's okay to make mistakes. We don't have to be perfect." And it was so fun. Like my
Bring this
husband and I
teacher a
had to
ribbon.
laugh because it's like, we've been working on this for a long time. It's
Yes.
like 2 days into first grade and that happens. But like I was telling my husband like that, like he wouldn't be able to do that 2 days into first grade if it wasn't for all of the like foundation stuff that we've been doing.
Heck yeah.
Um, and so, like I said, like we hadn't seen that click for him in our home, but it clicked like things were happening behind the scenes, like the
Wow.
seed was growing underground and, like it finally sprouted. Um, and so I'm grateful that we got to see that and that, even if it was at first grade and not in our house, that
It's such a great
happened. So
example. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Kids often learn from other people, like, they're learning from us, like that invisible
Yeah, we're
thing,
priming
and
them to be able
then one
to.
teacher or one coach, one music teacher says it, and they're like, oh, guess what they taught me? And you're like, they
Right.
taught you that? Really? They taught you that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that is, Caitlin, probably a great example of like how the reticular activating system works, which is so perfect, right? So I'm imagining maybe you are blessed to be in a school system where this first grade teacher, either she's really young. That's the beauty about really young teachers. They come out of school fresh with like updated information, or it is an older teacher that has been open to learning and growing. But
Yeah, the
somebody,
school that they're at is like a local Lutheran school, and the teachers are all like really
awesome.
into like social emotional learning and like zones of regulation. So it's like really beautifully like weaving together with what we're doing
Dang.
at home.
I
So
remembered the
yeah.
name of the school, Bethlehem Lutheran. So shout out to Bethlehem Lutheran in our town, school, little preschool church. Like again, seems to me that they are doing things in a really healthy way when it comes to faith and teachings, because they are doing the same exact thing. They are bringing in teachers that teach this, and it's just really great, right? To, again, someone who sees such a large amount of the unhealthy stuff in faith circles. So I love to hear that his school is teaching this. But when someone says that, like the way the reticular activating system works, and it's like so fun. I'm like knee deep in this right now because I'm doing a million private sessions for our full mastery students who, train to like become certified coaches of the Fresh Start Family approach if they want to. Some choose to just go on and volunteer or be fully mastered in their own home and family. But what happens is like when we believe things, we start to see them in the world. And that can be like not helpful stuff, or it can be helpful stuff, right? Like the unhelpful stuff, a lot of the message kids get when they're little is like mistakes do make you bad. Be ashamed, hide them, and do not admit fault. And danger, 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 blame somebody else because you are going to get hurt. And it's just so evident that your little guy is like, no, I believe mistakes are opportunities to learn. So as soon as a teacher does that or says something like the tiniest little bit as she's welcome to first grade in this classroom, we believe, and he's like, bingo, that's what I believe. So he sees it, it locks in, and it becomes his way of life, right? And so then that moves into, as he gets older, he takes responsibility for his mistakes because he doesn't see them as shameful. He's just like, hey, I got really mad at a kid and I pushed him on the playground today. Like, are you mad at me? I'm sorry. Whatever. It's just like it becomes this natural flow that's so beautiful, which is very different than we see with a lot of kids. So that story makes me want to cry. And especially because I just think of like young men, and it's just so refreshing to see a family who is like really leaning into raising young men with emotional literacy, with humility. There's a lot of the opposite of that in the world right now. And
For sure.
I'm just really thankful, Caitlin. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. Yes. Thank you for sharing some of your story with us. It really is an honor to have you in the community, to coach you on a consistent basis. And just thank you for like truly giving a damn about your family legacy and about how you show up in your motherhood. Thank you for leading your family and having the courage to step into this type of learning and consistency. And last question, and then we're going to wrap. What would you say to someone who is like, ooh, I'm doing one of those challenges right now we're about to do, head into our Unfrazzled free 4-day event where we're teaching a lot of nervous system stuff, and just it's so beautiful. It's such a great way to head into the school year. But someone's like, ooh, this sounds really cool. Like I might want to jump into this community. Our doors open pretty soon, or they may have opened by the time we launch this episode. What would you say to someone to encourage them to jump in on the adventure?
I would say now is the time. Like, don't wait for something else to be ready, or for you to like have more time in your schedule, or for your kids to be a certain age, or for things to be just right. Like, there's always going to be something more that could be more perfect. And like, now is the time. So just like jump in now with all the mess that you have going on. Now is it. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you so much. And I'll see you in the community soon.
Yep. Thank you, Wendy. And thanks to all your team.
Hooray! You made it to the end of a Fresh Start Family Show episode. Thank you so much for being here. If you have a quick second, make sure you hit subscribe to our show so you can be updated when our new episodes drop. I will see you back soon for the next episode.
Okay, parents, now is the time to get registered if you haven't yet for our free 4-day live stream event called Unfrazzled, starting September 8th, going through September 15th. If summer has left you feeling snappy, frazzled, or stretched too thin, this is your chance to reset before the school year starts. Head to freshstartfamilyonline.com/unfrazzled, or you can just DM me the word unfrazzled on Instagram. I'm at FreshStartWendy, and I will make sure you get all signed up in just a few minutes. I'll see you there.